cold, but I was too scared to knock.
It's okay. I'm here now. You're not alone.
Redwood Shores. Rain pounds. Adrian Vuong, a brilliant health tech CEO in a hoodie, spots a small girl on a porch, soaked, clutching a crumpled origami fox. Her breathing wheezes. The door behind her slams. He remembers being the kid no one saw. He kneels and whispers, "You are safe." But if he steps in, the headlines will follow. Tonight, which matters more, his image or her breath? The glass walls of Kinmind's Redwood Shores lab held the night like a secret. Servers hummed. A rain squall traced quicksilver slashes across the lagoon. Adrian Vuong stood alone at a workstation, hoodie sleeves pushed to his forearms, eyes steady behind minimalist glasses. 37, lean from running the Bay Trail at dawn, he looked like a man built for speed, yet trapped at idle. On the screen, a dashboard pulsed with soft blues. Breath patterns, heart rate drift, micro tremor flags. Data was a language he trusted. Data did not flinch. He had built Kinmind to catch the quiet crises people miss. The app's models predicted asthma flares, panic spirals, hidden stress. The team joked that he was trying to teach machines what human eyes should see. He never argued. He only pushed the code, one more threshold, one more model tuned with careful hands. A mug of ginger tea left a ring on a crumpled meeting agenda. He skimmed notes about the upcoming trial with Sequoia Clinic. Pediatric wearables, parent dashboards. He should have felt proud. Instead, pride thinned into noise. The office had emptied hours ago. His COO, Layla, had told him to go home, eat real food, call someone who knew him before Kinmind. He had smiled, promised he would, and returned to the models. It was easier to tune the system than to tune his life. He clicked through an anomaly report, pausing at a child's breath graph, a jagged pattern breaking into short, starved dips. He closed his eyes. The picture came back in whispers he could not fully silence, the memory of being 6 in a Chinatown parade. Pressed between strangers and color, the lion dance a thunder of drums, his hand slipping free of his mother's sleeve. He had tried to shout. The noise swallowed him. Someone found him eventually, but the world had already taught him how fast a person could vanish in plain sight. He checked the time. Past 10. Rain rattled the skylight. He shut down the monitors and pulled on his dark gray hoodie, the one that fit like a habit. Black tee, tailored jeans, worn leather sneakers that could carry him through emergency wards and boardrooms without asking permission. He moved through the quiet hallway, lights dimming behind him with each step. In the lobby, a cleaning crew member nodded. Adrian returned the nod, held the door, and stood for a moment under the awning, listening to the weather. His condo was 10 minutes away along a loop of gentle streets. He told himself he would heat soup, answer texts from his father, maybe watch a game on low volume. He always made small promises like that. He made big ones only to his work. The rain hit the hood of his car with a quickening drum. Wipers swept. The roads were slick, streetlights throwing soft halos onto standing water. Redwood Shores at night belonged to herons and the patient quiet of families already asleep. He drove slower than usual, past a row of townhomes with little porches and potted roses bowed under the downpour. Music played low, a piano loop he used to think with. At a red light, he watched a couple hurry across with a child between them, tiny yellow raincoat flashing. The kid leaned into the wind and laughed. It landed in him like a bell from somewhere far away. He tightened his grip on the wheel. He had learned to appreciate that sound at a distance, from waiting rooms and parks he walked through without stopping. Somewhere along the line, he had chosen to be indispensable to his company and optional to the rest of his life. The light changed. He turned toward his neighborhood, passing the small public library, its windows fogged from a late book club. Another block. The rain eased and then gathered itself again. He tapped the brakes near a curve, eyes registering the ordinary details he always catalogued out of habit. A recycling bin tipped over, a hedge trimmed too short, a porch light left off. Then his focus settled, not on the road, but on a narrow front step 2 houses ahead. Something small was hunched near the door, still as a stone. He leaned forward. The figure trembled. The rain soaked the little shape without mercy. Adrian slowed, pulse rising with a clarity he could not explain. The wipers cleared another band of water. A porch light flickered. He saw a small hand clutching something, pressed to a chest for warmth, as if the object could make its own heat. He pulled to the curb, the engine ticking softly. For a beat, he listened, as if the night would tell him what to do. It did not. The years had taught him that silence is where people disappear. He opened the door and stepped into the rain. The rain stung his face as he pulled the hood tighter, stepping onto the slick sidewalk. The little figure came into view, small shoulders shaking, soaked hair plastered to her cheeks. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her hands clutched something fragile, a crumpled scrap folded into the shape of a fox. Its ears sagged, paper darkened from water, but she held it like treasure. Adrian stopped a few feet away, crouching so his presence wouldn't loom. "Hey," he said softly, his voice steady despite the thunder above. "You okay out here?" The girl's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow bursts. That sound, he recognized it instantly. Wheezing. Not just cold. Asthma. His mind ran through algorithms as if she were a data point on a screen. Stress, cold air, risk of bronchospasm. But this wasn't data. This was a child, trembling on a porch in the storm. Her eyes flicked up at him, wide and glistening. She hugged the paper fox tighter. Don't tell her I cried," she whispered, the words barely audible under the rain. Adrian's breath caught. That single plea dragged him back to a memory he wished he could erase. Standing alone in a crowd as a boy, crying into his sleeve because he didn't want anyone to know he was afraid. His mother had found him later, her hand warm on his shoulder. He remembered how shame had burned hotter than the fear itself. He saw it now, in this little girl. He took off his hoodie without thinking, wrapping it around her small frame. The fabric sagged over her, almost swallowing her whole. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. "I've got you." She sniffled, shivering still. The origami fox peeked from the folds of the hoodie, its bent tail pressed to her hand. The door behind her banged open with a sharp crack. A woman's voice sliced through the night. "Mia!" Adrian turned. A tall woman with harsh eyes stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Her tone was sharp, impatient, not the worried tone of someone finding a child in distress. "What are you doing out here?" Adrian demanded, voice edged with disbelief. "She spilled water on the smart speaker," the woman snapped, shrugging as if it were trivial. 5 minutes outside teaches a lesson." Adrian felt his jaw tighten, fury rising in his chest. Before he could answer, Mia doubled over in a cough so fierce it bent her tiny body forward. He dropped to his knees beside her, steadying her shoulders. Each cough wheezed, ragged and sharp. This wasn't discipline. This was danger. His instincts overrode hesitation. He pulled his phone, fingers steady even as his heart surged. "This is 911, he said, clear and firm. "Child having difficulty breathing. Redwood Shores. Urgent." The woman in the doorway scoffed, folding her arms tighter. "She's exaggerating. She always does this." Adrian ignored her, eyes only on the girl. He remembered every data set, every graph, every warning he had built into his company's models. Numbers couldn't hold a child in the rain, but his arms could. Sirens were already faint in the distance. He gathered Mia against him, feeling the tremors of her lungs struggling for air. The origami fox was crushed between them, paper against his chest. In that moment, Adrian knew this was no anomaly on a screen. This was a life, and it was unfolding in his arms. The sirens drew closer, their wail bouncing off the rows of townhomes. Adrian knelt on the porch steps, shielding Mia from the rain with his body. Her small fists clung to his hoodie, breaths jagged, wheezy and uneven. He kept his tone calm, though his pulse raced. "You're okay, Mia. Just hold on. Help's coming." Her eyes, dark and frightened, darted toward the doorway. The woman, Kelly, he would soon learn, leaned against the frame, unimpressed. "She does this for attention," she muttered. "Crybaby act. Every time." Adrian didn't look at her. He knew enough to recognize cruelty disguised as discipline. His focus stayed on Mia, crouched in the storm, origami fox crumpled in her palm. He remembered his own tears swallowed in a crowd, how invisible a child could feel, and he couldn't shake the echo of her plea. "Don't tell her I cried." The ambulance screeched to a stop, red lights reflecting off the wet pavement. 2 EMTs hurried over, gear rattling. One knelt beside Adrian. "What's her condition?" 7 years old. History of asthma, I think," Adrian answered quickly. "She's wheezing, cold exposure, stress trigger, breaths are shallow." The EMT gave him a sharp look, half surprise, half respect. Adrian realized how clinical he must have sounded, like he'd rehearsed this in a boardroom. But this wasn't theory. This was a child's lungs fighting against the night. They fitted a mask over Mia's face, a soft hiss of oxygen filling the damp air. Her coughs softened, though her eyes fluttered, exhausted. Adrian exhaled, steadying himself. "She needs to go in," one EMT said. Kelly rolled her eyes. "Fine, but don't blame me when she starts up again. She's dramatic." Adrian turned, voice low, each word sharp. "She's not dramatic. She's in danger." Kelly faltered for a moment, then scoffed and pulled her sweater tighter. She offered no protest as they lifted Mia onto the stretcher. The origami fox slipped from her hand. Adrian bent, picked it up gently, and tucked it beside her. In the ambulance, he rode silent in the corner, eyes fixed on the girl under the blanket. Rain streaked the small rear window, each drop a reminder of the storm she'd been left in. At Redwood General, fluorescent lights replaced the storm's darkness. A pediatrician hurried in, Dr. Priya Menon, badge flashing as she pulled on gloves. "Asthma exacerbation," she confirmed after a quick exam. "Triggered by stress and cold exposure." Her gaze sharpened on faint bruises across Mia's arms. "These need to be noted." Adrian stood back, his hoodie dripping onto the linoleum, watching with a mix of relief and unease. The medical world was his field. He had designed tools to predict what Mia had just endured. But watching it unfold in real time, knowing it wasn't data but a living child, it made his throat tighten. The door creaked. A tall man entered. Worried lines etched deep on his face. "Mia?" His voice cracked. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Adrian recognized something raw in his eyes. Guilt, hope, desperation. Dr. Menon hesitated. "Are you her father?" "Yes, Daniel Tran." His gaze darted from his daughter to Adrian, as if trying to piece together who this stranger was, standing soaked beside her bed. Before Adrian could speak, another voice cut in. Firm, professional. "Jordan Hale, Child Protective Services." A woman with clipped hair and a worn leather satchel stepped forward, flipping open a file. Her eyes scanned Adrian, then the father, then Mia. Adrian's chest tightened. This wasn't just about tonight's storm. He felt it. This child's life carried patterns no algorithm had fully mapped. Shadows of yelling behind walls, bruises not explained. And, for the first time in years, Adrian realized he couldn't step back into the safety of data. He was already inside the story. Daniel's face was pale under the hospital lights, his hands hovering near his daughter, but afraid to touch the IV line taped to her small wrist. "I should have been here sooner," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Mia, I'm so sorry." Adrian stood at the foot of the bed, hoodie dripping. The origami fox balanced carefully on the side table. He wasn't sure if he belonged here, but leaving felt impossible. He had seen too much. Dr. Priya Menon's tone was gentle but steady. "She had an acute asthma attack, triggered by cold exposure and stress. We've stabilized her, but the bruises, they're concerning. Daniel's head jerked up, eyes wide. Bruises? From what? Jordan Hale, the CPS officer, cleared her throat, flipping open her notepad. We'll need to ask some questions. Neighbors have reported disturbances. Tonight, your partner's decision to leave Mia outside in the rain led to hospitalization. Do you understand the seriousness? Daniel's shoulders slumped, shame rolling off him in waves. Kelly said. She said Mia was exaggerating. I didn't think. He stopped, choking on the words. Adrian clenched his jaw. She wasn't exaggerating. I heard her wheezing before I even reached the porch. She could have stopped breathing out there. Dr. Menon nodded. If he hadn't called 911, we might be telling a different story right now. The words hung heavy. Daniel rubbed his temples, grief carving deeper lines in his face. I thought Kelly cared for her. I was working late shifts trying to cover bills. I trusted her. Jordan's eyes narrowed. Trust doesn't erase accountability. For now, Mia's safety is priority. We'll be investigating. A knock on the door interrupted. A middle-aged woman, bundled in a raincoat, stepped inside. Rosa Delgado, neighbor, eyes tired but firm. I told you this would happen, she said, looking at Jordan. I've heard yelling for months. That woman never had patience for Mia. She treats her like she's a burden. Adrian glanced at Mia, who stirred faintly under the blanket, mask fogging with each breath. Her hand searched for the crumpled fox until it brushed the paper ear. She sighed, as if its presence anchored her. The room buzzed with voices, questions, defenses, paperwork. Adrian felt his chest tighten with an old, familiar weight. For years, he had built walls of algorithms to buffer himself from this rawness. But here he was, standing in the flood of it, unable to turn away. Jordan tucked her notepad back into her satchel. Mr. Tran, I'll need a statement. We'll also require footage, if any exists. Tonight's incident can't be brushed aside. Adrian straightened, voice steady. There is footage. The house had a smart door system. My company ran a pilot with the same model. I can access it remotely through our trial servers. Daniel blinked, confusion mixing with hope. You can prove what happened? Adrian gave a short nod. If Kelly shoved her outside and locked the door, it'll be on record. The room quieted, the hum of machines filling the silence. Daniel finally sank into the chair beside Mia's bed, his large hand trembling as it hovered over her smaller one. I should have protected her, he whispered. Adrian's gaze softened, but he didn't move closer. He understood the gravity of those words, the weight of realizing too late what silence had cost. He remembered being 6, lost in that parade, waiting for someone to notice. The pain of being unseen lingered even decades later. And now he saw Mia, small, bruised, shivering even in sleep, still clutching a fragile paper fox. He realized then, this wasn't an isolated punishment. This was a pattern, and if he stayed quiet, he'd be part of it. Morning light filtered through the blinds, pale and unkind. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and damp clothes. Adrian sat in the corner chair, hoodie draped over his lap, watching the rise and fall of Mia's chest as the oxygen mask hissed quietly. She still clutched the origami fox, as if paper alone could keep her safe. Dr. Priya Menon returned, clipboard in hand. Her vitals have stabilized, but... She looked at Adrian, then Daniel, who sat bleary-eyed at his daughter's side. This wasn't just one bad night. The bruises are in different stages of healing. Some old, some new. That raises serious concerns. Daniel's head dropped into his hands. I should have seen it. I kept telling myself Kelly was strict, not cruel. I was working doubles. I wanted to believe she cared. Jordan Hale from CPS stepped closer, her tone clipped but not unkind. Believing doesn't protect your daughter, Mr. Tran. Action does. I need to know if you're prepared to take responsibility now, because if you aren't, the state will. Daniel's voice broke. She's all I have. I'll do whatever it takes. Please, just don't take her away from me, Rosa Delgado." The neighbor had stayed too, leaning in the doorway like someone who'd carried this truth too long. "I've called noise complaints 3 times. I heard yelling, slamming doors, Mia crying herself to sleep. That woman, Kelly, she doesn't belong near children." Jordan made notes, but her eyes flicked to Adrian. "And you, Mr. Vuong? You said there's video?" Adrian nodded. "Our pilot smart door system records 24 hours by default. If Kelly shoved Mia outside, there will be a timestamp." He pulled out his phone, fingers moving with the precision of someone more comfortable with code than conversation. He dialed his COO, Layla Cho. Her voice came crackling through. "Adrian, it's 6 a.m. What's emergency?" He cut in, his tone clipped. "I need access to Redwood Shores trial logs. 10:12 p.m. Address is Tran residence. Pull video from the smart door cam." A pause, then, professional steel in her voice. "Give me 10 minutes." Adrian ended the call and leaned back, eyes heavy from the night but sharper than ever. He knew what the footage would show. His gut had never failed him. Not in data, not in people. Minutes ticked by. Mia stirred faintly, eyes blinking open beneath the mask. Her first word was a whisper, strained and small. "Fox." Adrian leaned forward, holding up the damp, battered origami. "Right here. He stayed with you." Her lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile, then she coughed, body shuddering under the strain. Adrian guided her small hands into a breathing rhythm, voice calm. "Inhale, 4. Hold, 4. Exhale, 4. Hold, 4. He counted with her until the coughs softened, her breaths steadier. Daniel watched, shame tightening his features. "You shouldn't have to be the one teaching her that. It should have been me." Before Adrian could respond, his phone buzzed. A notification. He swiped it open. There it was, clear as glass. The footage showed Kelly shoving Mia out the door, locking it, and walking away. The timestamp glowed. 10:12 p.m. He turned the screen toward Jordan Hale. "This isn't discipline, it's abuse." Jordan's expression hardened. "That's enough for immediate protective action." She closed her notebook with a decisive snap. Daniel bowed his head, tears slipping through his fingers. "God, what have I done letting her near my daughter?" Adrian looked from the father to the child, then to the paper fox resting in Mia's palm. He knew the truth of it now. This wasn't just about algorithms or data sets. It was about a choice. Step into their lives, or walk away and let the numbers speak louder than his conscience. For the first time in years, Adrian felt the weight of silence pressing on him, and he knew if he stayed silent now, it would break him. The hospital corridor was hushed except for the squeak of nurses' shoes and the soft beep of monitors. Adrian leaned against the wall outside Mia's room, his hoodie still damp. His phone buzzed with a flood of unread messages, investor updates, meeting reminders, trial reports, but the screen felt like another world. Layla's voice came through on a final call. "We've archived the footage, Adrian. It's clear. CPS has what they need. Are you sure you want to be this involved? You've always said you don't do family entanglements." Adrian hesitated. He stared through the glass panel at Mia, curled under thin blankets, the origami fox perched beside her. "I've spent years teaching machines to see what humans miss, but if I turn away from this, what does that make me?" Layla sighed. "It makes you human, not invincible." When the call ended, Jordan Hale approached, file tucked under her arm. "Mr. Vuong, your testimony and the footage give us grounds to remove Kelly from the home, but I have to be honest with you. Cases like this are messy. If you stay involved, you'll be pulled into hearings, reports, media. You sure you're ready for that?" Adrian gave a small nod. "I didn't plan for any of this, but she deserves someone who doesn't look away." Inside the room, Daniel sat slumped in the chair, staring at his daughter as though afraid she might vanish if he blinked. He looked up when Adrian stepped back in. "Why are you doing this?" His voice was hoarse, raw. "You don't know us. You could walk away." Adrian pulled the chair closer, his expression steady. Because I know what it feels like to be unseen, and I won't let her carry that alone. Daniel's eyes dropped. I thought providing was enough. I worked every shift I could, but I wasn't there. I didn't see what Kelly was doing. His voice cracked, breaking on his own guilt. Adrian didn't offer comfort. He simply said, "Being there matters more than building walls of excuses. Kids remember who shows up." Daniel rubbed his face, tears smearing across his palms. "You sound like you've been here before." Adrian paused, his throat tightening. "Not here, but close enough to never forget." A nurse entered to check Mia's vitals, smiling softly when she saw the origami fox still in her hand. "She wouldn't let us take it. Said it's her shield." Adrian watched the small paper creature, its soggy folds clinging stubbornly together. He thought of all the models he'd coded to predict risk, all the patterns he had fed into machines. Yet, nothing in his algorithms could have written this. How a girl's entire sense of safety could be wrapped inside a fragile fox folded from a flyer. Later that evening, as rain tapered into mist, Adrian remained by her bedside. Daniel dozed off in the corner, exhaustion finally overtaking him. Mia stirred awake, eyes half-lidded but curious. You stayed," she whispered, her voice raspy. Adrian leaned forward. "Of course." Her fingers brushed the origami fox. "I don't like when it rains. It makes her madder." He swallowed hard, steadying his voice. "Rain isn't your fault, and you don't deserve to be left in it." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment, then softened. "Can you fold another one? Just in case?" Adrian reached into his pocket, pulling out the back of a prescription slip. He smoothed it against his knee, his hands awkward but steady as he began folding. Crease by crease, the paper took shape. When he set the new fox beside hers, Mia's small lips curved into the faintest smile. It wasn't much, but it was the first sign of trust. The hum of the hospital dimmed into evening quiet. Adrian sat with Mia, the new paper fox perched on her blanket beside the crumpled one. She traced the edges with her finger, the oxygen mask slipping as she whispered, "He looks stronger than mine." Adrian smiled faintly. "That's because you taught me how to fold it. Yours showed me the way." Her small chest rose steadier now, though every breath carried weight. Adrian leaned back, exhaustion pressing against him, but he couldn't leave. He wasn't sure why, only that silence would feel like betrayal. When Daniel stirred awake in the corner, his voice was heavy with guilt. "I don't deserve her trust. I failed her." Adrian turned, his own words quiet but firm. "Failing once doesn't mean you give up. It means you show up now, every day, until she knows she's safe." Daniel's eyes filled, his hands trembling. "I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if she'll ever forgive me." "Forgiveness comes after consistency," Adrian said. "Kids believe what they see, so show her." Jordan Hale returned, file in hand, her expression businesslike. "I'll need statements tomorrow, but tonight she stays here. Daniel, CPS, will be reviewing custody. Kelly will be restricted from contact." She glanced at Adrian. "You've done more than enough. You don't have to stay." Adrian looked down at Mia, who had fallen asleep with both foxes nestled under her chin. "I know," he said softly, "but leaving isn't an option anymore." Jordan studied him a beat longer, then nodded. "Then be prepared. When this gets out, and it will, you'll be questioned. You're a public figure. Your company is your shadow." Her words followed him like an echo after she left. For years, he had built KinMind to prove machines could prevent harm. Yet now, sitting in a hospital room with a child's trust resting in paper animals, he felt the hollowness of that belief. What good was teaching machines to see if he couldn't keep his own eyes open? The hours slipped by. Nurses adjusted lines. Daniel paced, and Adrian folded another fox from a corner of yesterday's newspaper. By dawn, 3 foxes sat in a row on the bedside table, each more creased than the last. When Mia stirred again, her lashes damp. She noticed them. 3. Like us, she murmured, voice fragile but sure. Her tiny hand reached out, curling around Adrian's fingers. He froze. That one gesture cracked open something long buried inside him. He remembered his own childhood hand reaching in a crowd, searching for someone who would take it. This time, he didn't let go. Outside the window, the storm clouds finally thinned, streaks of pale gold breaking through. Adrian realized with sudden clarity, if he turned away now, he would become exactly the kind of man his algorithms had been built to expose. One who let patterns of harm continue unchecked. He wasn't sure what role he was stepping into, rescuer, witness, maybe even guardian, but he knew one thing. Silence was no longer an option. And with Mia's hand gripping his, he felt the weight of that truth settle like a vow. The hospital night stretched into morning, but Adrian hadn't left. He sat beside Mia's bed, his hoodie draped over her like an oversized blanket. The new origami fox rested on her chest, rising and falling with each breath. Her eyes fluttered open, still rimmed with exhaustion, but steadier. "You're still here," she whispered, voice raspy. Adrian leaned closer. "I told you I wouldn't go." Her small hand gripped the fox, trembling. "When she yells, I can't breathe right. My chest feels tight, like the reins inside me." Adrian's throat constricted. He reached into his pocket, pulled out another scrap of paper, this time a prescription slip. "I want to teach you something. It's called box breathing. You fold your breaths like paper." She blinked at him, curious despite her weariness. "Watch," he said, holding up 4 fingers. "Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, then start again, just like folding corners of a fox." He guided her gently, counting in rhythm, his tone calm. At first her breath stumbled, uneven, but with each cycle she steadied. Her shoulders lowered, her eyes softened. When she managed the full pattern, she managed a tiny smile. "See?" he said quietly. "You're stronger than the storm." Her fingers tightened on the new fox he folded, paper edges damp from her palm. "Will you keep one too?" Adrian nodded, tucking the older, crumpled fox into his hoodie pocket. "This one stays with me. We'll match." Daniel had woken in the corner, eyes red from tears and fatigue. He watched silently, then whispered, "You're giving her what I should have all along." Adrian didn't look away from Mia. "Then start now. She doesn't need perfection. She needs presence." The door creaked open. Jordan Hale entered, her CPS badge clipped to her blazer. Kelly followed, face tight with rehearsed indignation. "This is ridiculous," Kelly snapped. "She lies for attention. You're all falling for it." Mia shrank against the pillow, her breaths faltering again. Adrian's hand remained steady over hers, grounding her. Jordan's voice was sharp. "Mia, you can tell us what happened. You're safe here." The room went silent. Mia's lips trembled. Her eyes darted between Kelly's glare and Adrian's steady gaze. She looked down at the paper fox in her hand, then back up. Her tiny voice quivered. "She locked me out." The words spilled into the air like breaking glass. Daniel choked back a sob, his face burying in his hands. Kelly's mask cracked, her fury flashing before she turned away. Jordan's pen scratched across her notepad, final and decisive. Mia exhaled hard, clinging to Adrian's sleeve. He squeezed her hand once, firm and sure. "You did the brave thing," he whispered. For the first time all night, her breath sounded clear. The room held its breath after Mia's words. Kelly sputtered, "She's making it up. Kids lie all the time." Jordan Hale didn't flinch. "We have video evidence. Combined with Mia's testimony, that's enough. Miss Barnes, you'll be escorted out." 2 security officers stepped in. Kelly's protests rose sharp, but her words bounced hollow against the sterile walls. As she was led away, Daniel collapsed into the chair beside his daughter's bed, his voice breaking. "Mia, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." Mia turned her face toward him, quiet, uncertain. Her small hand still gripped Adrian's sleeve. Adrian bent closer, voice calm. "You told the truth. That takes more courage than most adults I know." Mia's lips trembled, but then she whispered, Do I still have to go back?" Daniel's voice cracked. "No, sweetheart. Never again. I promise." He reached for her hand, but she hesitated, eyes flicking between him and Adrian. Adrian gently guided her small hand toward her father's. "It's okay. He's here now." Slowly, she let her fingers slip into Daniel's palm. Tears rolled down his face as he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." The origami fox lay between them, pressed flat but unbroken. Later that day, Adrian stood in the hospital courtyard, phone buzzing with endless notifications. Headlines were already spreading. AI CEO saves local girl from abuse. Investors wanted reassurances. Reporters demanded statements. His COO left him 3 urgent voicemails. But when he looked back at the window, Mia waved faintly from her bed, the fox perched on her lap, and all the noise faded. Jordan approached him outside, flipping her notebook shut. "Mr. Vuong, I hope you understand. You're part of this now. Media will hound you. People will question your motives." Adrian nodded slowly. "They can question whatever they want. What matters is she's safe." Jordan studied him. "Most men in your position would have driven away. Why didn't you?" He paused, rain dripping from the hospital awning onto his sneakers. "Because I know what it feels like to disappear in plain sight. I swore I'd never let it happen to anyone else if I could stop it." Jordan gave him a rare, almost approving smile. "Then don't stop now. Kids like Mia, they need consistency more than heroes." Her words stayed with him as he returned inside. In Mia's room, he found Daniel showing her a sketchbook the nurses had given her. Mia had drawn 3 foxes under a roof. Adrian swallowed hard. "That's beautiful." She beamed, holding it up proudly. "It's us, not outside anymore." Daniel looked at Adrian, his expression raw with gratitude. "I can't repay what you've done. But maybe you don't have to leave yet." Adrian met Mia's hopeful eyes, then glanced at the drawing again. For the first time in years, the data in his life gave way to something unmeasured, immeasurable. He realized he wasn't just helping Mia breathe. She was teaching him how to. The days that followed blurred into something almost fragile. Mia was discharged with a small inhaler tucked into her backpack, her wrists still marked faintly where IV tape had been. Adrian stood outside Redwood General, the morning fog rolling off the lagoon, waiting beside Daniel. Mia clutched her sketchbook tight, fox drawings spilling across the pages, but her gaze flicked nervously toward the sky, as though the weather itself might betray her. Daniel crouched to her height. "It's just clouds, sweetheart. No rain today." His voice cracked with effort, trying to sound steady. Adrian knelt beside them, holding out a slim wristband. Sleek, white, with a soft glow. "This is a prototype my company made. It tracks your breathing, your heart rate. If it senses trouble, it alerts." Mia's eyes widened as he slipped it gently onto her wrist. "It's like a fox that watches me?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Exactly. A fox that never leaves." For a moment, her small shoulders relaxed. She reached up, hugged him quick, then hid her face in Daniel's jacket. Later that afternoon, Daniel suggested something simple. "Let's ride by the lagoon, just for a few minutes. She likes the water when it's calm." Adrian borrowed a bike from a hospital volunteer program, its frame squeaking faintly. He rode slowly beside them, the breeze carrying the smell of eucalyptus and salt. Mia pedaled a tiny pink bike, her wristband glowing faintly. Each laugh that escaped her was like a fragile treasure dropped into the open air. When she grew tired, they sat on a bench overlooking the rippling water. Mia opened her sketchbook, her small hands flipping pages until she showed Adrian the newest drawing, a fox in the rain, but this time under a roof. Adrian stared at it for a long moment. "May I keep this?" She nodded solemnly. "For your office, so you remember." He folded the page carefully, as if it were glass. Back at KinMind the next morning, the lab was alive with code and chatter, but for the first time Adrian carried something more than reports. He pinned Mia's drawing above his workstation, its crayon lines bright against the sterile glass walls. Layla noticed. "That from the girl?" "Yes," Adrian said quietly. "She's the reason we do this." But the world outside KinMind wasn't silent. News had spread. An AI CEO who found a child in the rain, who stayed when others might not. Reporters swarmed, investors whispered. Some called him compassionate. Others asked if he was distracted, if his focus on one child meant his company's edge was slipping. That night, Adrian scrolled headlines on his phone. Visionary CEO becomes guardian angel. KinMind's future questioned amid founder's involvement in CPS case. He set the phone face down. In the silence, he looked at the paper fox tucked in his hoodie pocket, then at Mia's drawing on his wall. He realized he couldn't measure the worth of what he had stepped into, not in data, not in dollars, but he could measure it in a child's steady breath. By the end of the week, the world had caught up with Adrian Vuong. Cameras lined the sidewalks outside KinMind headquarters. Headlines shouted his name. AI CEO shelters abandoned girl. Hero or distracted visionary? Investors demanded conference calls. Analysts speculated whether compassion had a price tag. Inside the glass-walled boardroom, screens flashed with market reports. Adrian sat at the head of the table, hoodie still damp from the drizzle outside. Layla stood at his side, calm but firm. "Adrian, the funders are nervous," she said. "They think this case could destabilize confidence. They want a statement. Neutral, professional, no emotion." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Neutral doesn't save children. Neutral doesn't breathe life back into someone left in the rain." A silence fell across the room. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. They knew him as a man of code and precision, not sentiment. But his voice carried a steel they hadn't heard before. Later that afternoon, he met Daniel and Mia at the hospital courtyard. Reporters followed at a distance, lenses aimed like arrows. Adrian ignored them. He knelt by Mia's side, checking the soft glow of her wristband. "How's it working?" he asked. Mia grinned shyly. "It beeped when I ran too fast, like the fox telling me to slow down." Daniel cleared his throat, gratitude etched deep in his features. "She hasn't had a flare since you gave her this. Adrian, I don't know how to thank you." Adrian shook his head. "Thank me by being there, every day." That evening, as the fog rolled off the bay, Adrian stood before a cluster of microphones. Reporters shouted questions about KinMind's future, about Mia, about why a billionaire CEO was folding paper foxes in a hospital room. He raised his hand for silence. "I built a company to help people breathe easier. But last week, I realized data alone isn't enough. So today, KinMind is launching the Breath and Art Fund, a program that combines AI wearables for asthma with free art therapy for vulnerable children." The crowd murmured. Flashes lit the dusk. "1 in 12 kids in this country has asthma," Adrian continued, voice steady. "Many of them lack consistent care, or safe homes, or someone to remind them they matter. We can't solve everything, but we can start here." Mia's drawing, a fox under a roof, was tucked in his jacket pocket. He could feel its edges against his heart, steadying him. A reporter called out, "Are you distracted from your role as CEO?" Adrian looked straight at the camera. If protecting children is a distraction, then maybe it's the only thing worth being distracted by. The feed went live across networks. Within hours, critics debated, investors argued, But parents, thousands of them, flooded Kinmind's inbox with stories of children who couldn't breathe at night, who needed both science and compassion. Back in his loft, Adrian sat alone, the city lights reflecting off the bay. He pulled out the origami fox from his hoodie pocket, smoothing its damp folds. His phone buzzed with alerts, but he ignored them, because for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like a roof, and somewhere across town a little girl was sleeping soundly, her breath steady, her fox glowing faintly on her wrist. The following week blurred into long days of media storms and longer nights of quiet choices. Kinmind's lobby filled with journalists, while emails from investors arrived every hour demanding clarity. Yet Adrian's mind wasn't fixed on numbers or contracts. It was on a small girl's steady breaths. In his office, Mia's drawing of the fox under a roof hung on the glass wall, bright against the sterile backdrop of servers and whiteboards. Every time he glanced at it, he remembered the trembling child in the rain, and the vow he'd made without words. That morning, Layla stepped in, tablet under her arm. "We've got pressure from the board. They want assurances this Breath and Art Fund isn't a distraction." Adrian leaned forward, his hoodie sleeves pushed up. "It's not a distraction. It's our future. If we can't prove technology can protect the most vulnerable, then what are we even building?" Layla studied him, then nodded slowly. "Then you'd better be ready to fight for it." Later that day, Adrian stood in a community center in San Mateo. The walls were lined with children's drawings. Houses, birds, oceans, and a dozen kids sat at tables, folding origami animals. Among them was Mia, her wristband glowing softly, her asthma monitored in real time. She laughed when her fox's ear bent too far, then glanced up to find Adrian watching. "You fold one too," she insisted, holding out a square of bright orange paper. He took it, fumbling more than he cared to admit. But when his clumsy fox stood beside hers, her smile was brighter than any boardroom victory he'd ever had. That evening, he spoke to a small crowd of parents, doctors, and reporters. 1 in 12 children in this country struggles with asthma. Many don't just need inhalers. They need emotional safety, creative outlets, a sense of being seen. The Breath and Art Fund will provide both: wearables that predict attacks and art therapy to heal what medicine alone can't. He held up Mia's original fox, laminated now, preserved. This started with one child in the rain, but she's not alone, and neither are we. Applause rose, quiet at first, then strong. Later, walking Mia and Daniel back to their car, Adrian bent down. "You did good today," he said softly. Mia clutched her fox. "I wasn't scared when I talked, because you were there." Daniel's voice shook as he added, "You've given us more than safety. You gave us a second chance." Adrian nodded, though his throat tightened. He knew second chances weren't handed out freely. They were fought for, step by step, breath by breath. Back at his loft, he placed the new orange fox beside the crumpled one he'd first seen in Mia's hand. Different shapes, different moments, but together they told the story. Adrian realized then that his life wasn't about algorithms alone. It was about roofs built over fragile hearts, about foxes folded in paper and in spirit. And for the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't working alone. The courtroom was smaller than Adrian expected. Plain walls, buzzing lights, the faint smell of old carpet. Yet the weight inside it felt enormous. Daniel sat at the table beside his attorney, eyes fixed on the judge. Adrian sat quietly behind them, hood pulled low, the origami fox in his pocket like an anchor. Mia sat with a child advocate, her legs swinging nervously. She clutched her sketchbook tight. When the judge asked her if she wanted to speak, she nodded, voice trembling but clear. She put me outside when it rained," Mia said. "I couldn't breathe. I was scared. But I don't want to be scared anymore." The judge's gaze softened. Papers shuffled. Arguments were made. Kelly's attorney tried to twist the story, but the footage spoke louder than words. Clear images of a door slamming shut on a small child's cries. At last, the ruling came. Temporary custody granted to Daniel. Kelly barred from contact pending further review. The gavel struck, final and sharp. Daniel pulled Mia into his arms, tears sliding down his cheeks. "We're going home, sweetheart. Just us." Mia clung to him, then looked back toward Adrian. She reached into her sketchbook and tore out a page, a crayon drawing of 3 foxes under a roof, each smiling, the rain kept outside. She walked it over to him with small, steady steps. "This one's for you," she said softly. Adrian took the drawing with both hands as if it were more fragile than glass. His voice caught. "Thank you, Mia. I'll keep it safe." Daniel stepped forward, his voice husky with gratitude. "You didn't have to stay, but you did. You gave her courage. You gave me the push I needed to finally be the father she deserves." Adrian shook his head. "You're the roof she needs. I just reminded you to hold it up." When they left the courthouse, sunlight finally pierced through the heavy Bay Area clouds. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh beginnings. Adrian stood on the steps, watching Mia skip ahead, her fox wristband glowing with every breath she took. Daniel turned back once more. "You'll come visit, won't you?" Adrian slipped the drawing into his jacket. "As long as she wants me to." For the first time in years, he felt something ease in his chest, like he too had been given air after holding his breath too long. That night, in his loft, he taped Mia's new drawing beside the first one. 2 foxes, then 3. Rain outside, roof within. He stared at them until the city lights blurred, knowing they were more than paper. They were promises. And for the first time, he whispered into the quiet, "You have a safe roof now, and so do I." Dawn broke over redwood shores with a pale shimmer, the lagoon reflecting streaks of rose and gold. At Kinmine's glass headquarters, the day began the way it always did. Servers buzzing, staff filing in with coffee, monitors lighting up with streams of data. But to Adrian, everything felt different. He walked into the open office wearing a fresh hoodie, the fabric soft against his skin. Tucked carefully in the pocket was the crumpled origami fox, the one he had first found in Mia's hand, still fragile, still carrying the weight of that night. He touched it briefly, a reminder of why he was here. At the morning stand-up, the team gathered in a circle. Engineers rattled off updates, analysts mentioned trial numbers, but Adrian's attention shifted to the small figure standing beside him. Mia. She wore her new wristband, the glow faint but constant. Someone had pinned a visitor's badge to her hoodie, scrawled across it in bright marker, "Junior Guest." She looked around the room with wide eyes, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Layla smiled at her. "Welcome, Mia. You get to start us off today." Mia blinked, startled. She glanced up at Adrian, unsure. He crouched down, voice steady, warm. "Just show them your fox." Slowly, Mia opened her sketchbook and held up the page she'd drawn. A fox under a roof, smiling in the rain. The team went quiet. A few engineers exchanged glances, their usual rush replaced with something gentler. "She made that for me," Adrian said, his voice carrying through the space. "It's why we do this. Not for the numbers, not for the charts, but so no child has to stand outside in the storm, unseen." The room held still. Then, softly, someone began to clap. The sound grew, rising until the space echoed with applause. Mia's face lit up, shy and proud all at once. Later, as the meeting broke, Adrian stood by the window with Mia at his side. The water shimmered, boats drifting lazily in the distance. She tugged on his sleeve. "Do the machines see people now?" she asked, her voice curious. Adrian looked at her, then out at the city he had spent years trying to teach machines to understand. "They're learning," he said. "But I think the real lesson is for us, to remember to see the ones we forget." She leaned against him, small and certain. "You saw me." His throat tightened. He slipped the old fox from his pocket, placed it in her hand. Now we both see each other. As staff buzzed behind them, as the city pulsed outside, Adrian felt something shift deep within him. He had built KinMind to save lives with code. But in the end, it was a 7-year-old girl with a paper fox who reminded him what saving lives truly meant. And in that quiet moment, watching Mia smile at her reflection in the glass, Adrian Vuong finally understood. True vision wasn't just teaching machines to see. It was choosing, every day, to see people, especially the invisible ones,